Carmichael, the architect of the mobile app that we're actually launching today, to share a little bit about the app and to actually conduct a demonstration. You're all part of history being made here today in Trinidad and Tobago, and we look forward to your support in continuing to spread the word. So I'll just read the statement. After Mr. Carmichael, we'll hear from the Commissioner and then go into the Q&A. The murder toll is now 448. The spate of murders, aggression, and violent crimes across Trinidad and Tobago continues to spiral out of control. TNT is heading down a very dangerous path. Government cannot address this alone. What is required is a united approach. Increased collaboration across government, civil society, and faith-based organizations is absolutely critical at this time. We are a nation in crisis. What's our national response plan? The powerful ladies of Trinidad and Tobago are engaged in several development initiatives as we seek to create an environment of social responsibility, address the violence across our country, especially against our women and girls, develop champions for Trinidad and Tobago, ensure justice for our nation's youth, and nurture a sense of passion, pride, and belonging within our respective communities and across our great nation. A lobby agenda without evidence-based analysis and practical solutions is an exercise in futility. We need to be clear. What are our concerns? What specifically are we seeking to address? Why? When? How? And who do we need to engage? Like many citizens across TNT, PLOTT are deeply disturbed by the escalating murder rate. Each day, we wake to another horrific story. What impact does this continue to have on the overall psyche of our society? What do we really understand about the contributors to and overall impact of this dilemma? The ripple and catastrophic effect of this will be felt by many for generations. What if we were to address the aggression and violence in our society as a contagious health disease, as we would an epidemic? Would that end, curb, or minimize the impact? When it comes to securing the lives of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, prevention is better than cure. This disease is infecting and killing an entire generation. Let's begin with an overall health check and assess the environment of the infected population. What role has illicit trade, narcotics, arms and human trafficking, government corruption, as well as fiscal irresponsibility, mismanagement, ignorance, or incompetence within both public and private sector played? Additionally, what role has financial inequity, race, class, gender, geographic and social status played? What are the primary contributors to violent crime? How many of the victims of violent crimes have been young men, women, children? How many of the murders have been white-collar, gang, or domestic violence related? How many of these crimes have been executed in broad daylight? Are we as a nation effectively tracking and reporting on crime? What do the statistics indicate? PLOTT has been conducting detailed analysis of these crimes. We have noted as at November 30th that 88.4% of all killings in this country have been by shooting and stabbing. What are the implications of this? Whereas men murdered by shooting represent about 75% of the male cases, women are most often stabbed. Of the women murdered, 31% were by firearm, and 43% were stabbed to death. More than 1/3 of all murder victims were males of African descent, aged 16 to 35 years, and killed by firearm. Most murder victims were males, that's 88% of all victims, and were between 26 to 35 years of age. More than half the murder victims were males between the ages of 16 to 35 years. 3/4 of all victims were killed by firearm. The majority of victims were Africans. 52% of all murder victims were of African descent and killed by a firearm. These murders most often occurred in what many previously considered their safe zones, that is, in or around the victim's home. Today, a typical incident of murder in Trinidad and Tobago occurs between 6 p.m. and 2 a.m. and is no longer isolated to traditional hotspots. The violence has spread across Trinidad and Tobago, with the majority of murders now taking place around the east and northeast of Trinidad, and by perpetrators with presumed gang-related motives, and the majority of these murders remain undetected. That is, in spite of the fact that almost 80% of the victims were found and or killed in the same municipality where they resided. In November, the highest number of murders were in the East and Northeast divisions. This area represented almost half of all murders last month. Central Trinidad recorded the second highest number of murders. We have and will continue to share details on these murders, domestic violence, and other crimes against our young men, women, and children. As we seem to have become desensitized, beyond the loss of life and sanity, what is all of this really costing our nation? Can we quantify the impact of this continued and senseless loss of human life, the emotional distress? What impact is this having on national productivity, social and economic growth and sustainability? If we could quantify the impact, would it make a difference to our stakeholders? Would it make a difference to you? With a detection rate that varied between 3 to 9% in 2015, how many of the murders in Trinidad and Tobago are and will remain unsolved? Where are the perpetrators now? Based on the contributors and geographic spread of violent crime, we see that they are not isolated to any one specific community. They reside in your neighborhoods and workspace. They may well be your friends, family, and colleagues. How long are we going to allow this to continue? What's our national response plan? In addition to our monthly events, we continue to issue 2 monthly publications, one on Orange Day and a monthly crime analysis at the beginning of each month. It is our intention to make the content of these publications accessible to all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. As the issue of violent crime persists, PLOTT has engaged a number of strategic partners to assist with expanding our current research and analysis, the scope of our monthly publications, and our organization's community outreach. While PLOTT's activities are regularly communicated via social media and traditional media, print, radio, and television, including newspaper cover stories and prime-time news coverage, this is not enough. We want the violence to stop. We need to put a solution in the hands of all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. We need to make community defense against crime a priority. We need to provide safety